Okay, good afternoon once again, and let's start today's session. Uh, it's actually week 9, but because of the rescheduling of some of the classes, uh, I'm taking the week 8 tutorial in this today's 1 hour session. So during the week 8, we had a discussion on, if you could remember, we had a discussion on the macro environment. I mean to say, like the marketing environment, we have discussed about that. But uh, in the marketing environment, we had a two broad type: macro and micro environment. So macro environment, which is external influences, whereas the micro environment are the factors which directly influences the particular form or the focal form. So today's discussion will be all around one company, that is Ford Ranger, and we'll try to look at the different macro environment factors in this particular form. Just having a small recap. So we had a discussion on the marketing environment, particularly the micro and macro level of environment. So in the micro level, we talked about how the different stakeholders, I mean to say, supplier, intermediaries, competitors, general public, or even the customer, how they influences business function of particular firm. Whereas the macro level environment, which are broad and which are external to the firm they have a little control over those influences, those factors, and these factors include demographic, economic, environmental or natural, technological, social, cultural, and political, legal. So these were consist of the macro environment. So that is the the purpose of today's discussion, to have a to look at more specific the macro level factors with respect to the Ford Ranger, a particular firm, or in general particular to one industry, that is automobile industry. So idea is, what is the learning objective of this tutorial is outline possible macro environmental trends and changes that might impact the business of that might impact the firm product line or the Ford Rangers product line, and present the threats and opportunities. So yes, understanding the macro level environment, it really gives you a kind of indication uh, what kind of opportunities you have and what traits you should take into the consideration, along with the what strength and what weaknesses do you have. Like overall, if you consider the SWOT analysis, we had a small discussion on SWOT analysis last week. So yes, SWOT analysis gives you a kind of helps you in analyze those factors. Okay, so uh, what I will do is I will go through some more specific relevant factors related to the macro environment, uh, particularly to the automotive industry, because the Ford Ranger, we know that it's one of the biggest player in the automobile industry. So let's have a kind of broad broad outlook or broad generalization of this industry, how it works, and what micro level of factors influences to what extent to the firm or players in this particular industry. I'm sure some of these factors will be relevant to the company of analysis for today's discussion, that is Ford Ranger. Okay. So in general, if I talk about the automobile industry, they have been around for last more than 200 years, right? So, but recently in the last 2 or 3 decades, the players, the major multinationals, they noticed that the sort of scary environmental ramification of the industry. I mean, the industry has gone through like complex challenges altogether. So we have to wonder how still of, in spite of having those challenges and those factors, external factors, still how these players are able to survive in this the hard time with all these tension. So more particularly like the macro analysis, which is in short also known as PESTEL analysis, P political, economical, S stands for social, cultural, T is technological, legal, and environmental. So in terms of the PESTEL analysis, we'll try to look along all those factors in the particular automobile industry, hoping to gain some more insight into the future of this space. Anyway, idea is to understand one particular industry and then more relevant one particular firm which operates in the same industry. So let's start with the first factor is political legal, and what more specific issue or the challenges the automobile players they need to face, they are facing is, the first one is safety regulation. I'm talking about now political and legal. So safety regulation, emission policies, copyright issues. What do you think? Who takes care of all these regulations, guidelines, policies, and issues? It's the government, right? That's why this factor is more political and legal. Even the certain economy worldwide, they have a more control over the legal. The government is there to take both the legal issues into the consideration. They have the guidelines. They have the in the democratic economy, they have the rights to frame the guidelines regarding all this. So the first one is safety regulation. It seems like the airlines is more safety, but even compared to the road transport, they are more challenging. Means the chances of having more and more accident on the road is like, it's well known to us, right? Particularly in some of the developing economy where the infrastructures are lacking, the chances of the probability or the statistics suggest that the more and more accidents happen. So I think so, like what is important here to have a kind of strict safety regulation around the automotive industry. So government across the world, they enforce strict regulation around this industry. In terms of safety regulation, you know, the kind of seat belts, kind of safety instrument has to be there in the motor vehicles. So those are very, very, very important, right? Not on the front, only for the front seat seaters, even for the back seaters also, it's important to have a complete safety. So all around, like this makes more difficult to launch a new business in this space, in this industry. Could you remember any of the new player in this industry in the last 1 decade or something like that? Probably like it would be very few, and maybe those are from some developing economy, but most of the developed economy, if you have a look, they have already like running from since long. So it's difficult for a new businesses to enter in this industry because of this strict political, legal, or safety rules and regulation. Even the same thing is happening in the healthcare industry. Also, you can do the kind of analysis, similar kind of analysis in the healthcare industry, which is also very challenging, right? And lots of government rules and regulation has to be to comply with. So those issues are there. So in the same one, we have the emission policies, the who decide the emission policies and everything. It's a kind of government rules. They decide, they set the standards for the emission policy. So all the cars, motorcycles, or the buses are, we know that they are powered by the fossil fuels, such as the petroleum and diesel, which cause a number of environmental pollutants when they are used, they are burned. So the major concern with the motor vehicle is that of the carbon emissions. So emission policies has to be taking into the consideration of the carbon, the level of carbon emissions. So, you know, the certain amount of the carbon dioxide they produce if you drive a vehicle. So for the government, it is for their interest to have a kind of these emission statistics for the new as well as the existing vehicles. So if you could remember some of the country, some of the vehicles, the government, they made a policies that you can't run it on the proper or on the highways, because if it emits more and more pollutions, maybe after 15 or 20 years, you have to dump those motor vehicles. So those rules and regulations are there to keep the balance of the ecology. So I mean to say, the organizations, they are trying to cope up with these political, legal, and all the environmental issues, and for that they are working very hard. But unfortunately, we have a very known case nowadays, the Volkswagen emission scandal. So the company was trying to cheat by showing that they are taking a proactive action in terms of reducing emissions, car emissions to a great extent, but uh, the study says that statistics later revealed that the company was cheating. It was not going, and it was a like kind of unethical communication to the stakeholders, which company was not doing, but they were claiming they are doing. So something like, so it's a very good case of Volkswagen emission scandal. So they were trying to improve, no doubt every firm is trying to, but this was a kind of scandal. Probably I will take 2-3 minutes. It's just a very short video. Let's go through this one. It's a bit interesting. So let's go through this example. Okay. So the Volkswagen, yeah.
One reason, once the world's top automaker, Volkswagen has fallen to number 2. One reason, the company admits it rigged 11 million vehicles worldwide to cheat on emissions tests. Here's a breakdown of the scandal, blow by blow. A group of scientists at West Virginia University discovered that Volkswagen was using software in its diesel cars to cheat on clean air tests. The software detects when the car is being tested. The engine then runs differently, making emissions seem cleaner than they ordinarily are. They find emissions are up to 40 times higher than legal limits, but the company repeatedly denies the claims to U.S. officials. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency announces that Volkswagen was manipulating its diesel cars to score better on emissions tests. Volkswagen admits rigging 500,000 cars in the U.S. to work around emission laws, but the company's problems are bigger than that. It admits the problem is global in scale, affecting 11 million cars worldwide. Amid calls to fix the affected vehicles, VW halts the sale of diesel cars in the U.S. CEO Martin Winterkorn apologizes and resigns. He's replaced by Matthias Müller, the head of VW's Porsche brand. Meanwhile, Volkswagen is hit by endless lawsuits from customers upset that their cars have lost value because of the software. Volkswagen's German headquarters are raided by police in search of incriminating documents as German prosecutors investigate. Volkswagen says they are cooperating, and anyone involved will face the full consequences. Days later, the French and Italian offices are also raided. Plans are announced to start recalling the 8.5 million affected cars across Europe. The company says they will be fixed by the end of 2016. VW cedes its recently won title of world's top automaker to Toyota. Michael Horn, head of Volkswagen in the U.S., testifies to U.S. lawmakers, blaming the scandal on a few engineers. Senior management was not involved, he says. After months of apologizing, VW decides it's time to pay up. The company forks over $500 each to owners of affected cars in the U.S. The gesture cost Volkswagen $250 billion, but for some customers, it's no longer enough. They demand a buyback of the rigged vehicle. 9 managers suspected of involvement in the scandal are suspended by the company. Volkswagen says it will set up a fund to compensate owners, having mediator Ken Feinberg to decide how much each should get. Another exec is out. This time it's Michael Horn, CEO of Volkswagen Group of America. He resigned. Volkswagen reaches a deal to buy back or fix 500,000 U.S. cars involved in the emissions cheat. The company says the price tag for the crisis is double its original estimate. It sets aside about $18 billion to deal with the cost of the scandal. VW agrees to pay up to $14.7 billion to settle the issue. That's much more than any other automaker has paid for wrongdoing. Most of that money will go to owners of the affected vehicles. In addition to compensation for lost value, Volkswagen will have to either buy back or fix the car. But this isn't the end of the story. The company still faces civil and criminal investigations.
Okay, so you have noticed that the company, they are trying to comply with all the rules, regulation, and guidelines, and for that they are spending a lot of money for uh, in the R&D, research and development. But this sort of cheating is really not good for the society. So apart from that, in the political legal, we have copyright issues. I'm sure you know about the intellectual property rights. If you have some innovative work, you have come up with some great idea, brilliant ideas. So you wanted to protect your steps, right? Your creativity, your innovation in terms of copyrights, in terms of patent, trademarks, trade secrets. So who decide, like, if the companies are in the conflict, the it has to be resolved, those issues has to be resolved by the government, like. So the copyright issues also is very very important, and it's a part of see, there are cases, especially in this particular industry or automobile industry, where the certain firms, they have kind of copied. It's a kind of copycat issue, so they have copied from some of the, probably this happened like most often the advanced economy, like in the developing economy, where they're trying to just copies the same sort of model design or the process from some of the manufacturer from the advanced economy. So there are these, like, some are like, it's not like more issues, but yes, some of the issues are there. So that's why at the political and legal level, at the countries level, each and every country, they set their own regulations. They have their own policy regarding the all the intellectual property rights. Even the United Nations, they have come up with the rules and standard rules and regulations regarding the intellectual property rights. So every country has to comply those standards. So talking about the political legal, we have mostly seen three major ones: safety regulation, emission policy, and the copyright issues. Let's see the another factor in the macro level, that is economic. So which factor is more relevant in terms of economics? The growing disposable income. Yes, this is a gradual it's a gradual trend in terms of increasing the household income overall, like worldwide. We have noticed that, especially the middle level of people nowadays, they have more expendable income. So it's growing, income level is growing. That indicates that the kind of purchases, the kind of demand will be, is also growing, or at the slow pace, but it's growing. That is important. So ultimately, this growing demand for the motor vehicle means that more cars will be sold, and the automobile industry will become even more profitable for its participants. So this factor, you see, it's a kind of opportunity. But remember the SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunity, trade. So what about this economic factor? This particular economic factor, that is a growing disposable income, is a kind of opportunity for every firm working in this particular industry, isn't it, right? Okay. There could be other economic factors, so you need to relate it. But one of the factor which is more appropriate, I took it for the discussion. Let's talk about the social culture. Yes, driving a luxury car, driving a more innovative, designing more stylish car is a sort of kind of esteem needs. Also, you're fulfilling because you're fulfilling the esteem needs, right? Even the safety needs are there. More and more luxury, more and more high premium prices. Motor vehicles give you better safety and securities. Those features are always included. So socio-cultural factor is the popularity of the driving. So there is no doubt, from the social perspective, the popularity of driving is growing. Even you have a kind of bicycle on other motorbikes and all, but still kind of using the motor vehicle such as the Ford Ranger gives you kind of esteem, satisfaction, gives more and more mm, confidence, right? It's clearly differentiate you from rest of the people in your community. So it's a kind of social culture factor. Okay, so especially for the commonplace for the family around the world to own more and more motor vehicles. In fact, owning one or more motor vehicles is a norm in the developed country, even in the Australia. Every household, each individual probably they have their own separate kind of motor vehicles. So it's a part of kind of cultural phenomena. It's not like many of us can't get away with the bicycle and buses, as we say. But yes, it's a kind of opportunity. Property of driving is again this is a kind of opportunity for the major players, or for the all the players working in this particular automobile industry. Okay. So next factor is technological. Technological factor, we have two important points. So one is the self-driving car. You see that because of the technology nowadays, you might have heard that some of the company, they are very good, like they have already introduced, especially in the last video we have seen the Tesla. They have already come up with the self-driving car. And the second technical issue is improved safety. It's because the safety is more and more demanding, so they're trying continuously to improve the safety. So what is the self-driving car? Without a doubt, a biggest technological shift impacting this industry is the advance of self-driving technology. So each and every player in this industry, they are trying to take an ace. They are trying to take advantage of, the concept of first mover advantage. We have another concept related to this is late mover advantage. So the first mover advantage means if you are coming, you are the first in the industry, you have the huge gain in terms of being competitive in the market and getting more and more market share. Yes, there is a concept of late mover advantage as well, but it's very rare for firm to enter at the late and gain the market share. We have a very good example of late mover advantage, and the firm Toyota, especially when they entered to the Asian economy. Although they entered the Asian economy very late, but they acquired huge market share. So that is the very unique case of Toyota, especially the automotive industry case, where we have seen the late mover advantage. But most of what is more important is being a first mover advantage. So self-driving cars, those who are coming first, even the more electric car and all, that is those who are already come up with the electric vehicles, motor vehicles and bicycles. So they certainly they have the first mover advantage. So this is the biggest revolution nowadays in this industry, the self-driving car. So I think it's better to see one good video on in the same firm, Volkswagen. They have come up with the self-driving car, and they are saying that this is going to be the future of the transport. So let's have a kind of short analysis on this self-driving car by the Volkswagen. You see the company Volkswagen, they are really good. We have seen the emission cheating and all that cases, but still the company and the R&D front, they are doing awesome. Let's go through this one. It's very
driverless
inspiring.
cars might not be ruling the roads. Driverless cars might not be ruling the roads just yet, but the big players in car manufacturing are investing heavily into what is expected to be the biggest breakthrough in motoring since the Model T. Although much of the anticipation has predominantly focused on the use of electricity and AI to power and drive the vehicles of the future, motoring giants such as Geely and Volkswagen are working to revolutionize car ownership too, with the shared economy at the heart of their new concepts. Automotive giant Geely's Lynk & Co is a subscription car ownership platform which gives users access to vehicles in their local area. When it launched in China in 2017, the scheme's initial release of 6,000 memberships sold out immediately, and the service is still welcoming around 10,000 new members each month. And Volkswagen's autonomous concept car, Cedric, could bring an entire new meaning to public transport. Peter Buda is Vehicle Design Director at Volkswagen's Future Sector Europe.
Our mission, if you like, is to look far into the future and to to find out what are the needs of our future customers, of our future users, what are their needs in their environment, and to understand the challenges we're having ahead of us, and to find mobility solutions. Cities are getting more and more compressed, and traffic is getting worse, and traffic is getting denser and denser. There is a limit we can tackle, and then we need to find new solutions. And I think in the future, it doesn't make sense to own a car when you live in one of our cities. The car is just costing lots of money while it is sitting on the street and occupying 10 square meters of space, of valuable city space. So therefore, ideas like autonomous driving, like autonomous shuttles, pods that are taking you from A to B, fully autonomous, these kind of solutions will help to have a better quality again in the city.
The sharing economy has enabled people to monetize their properties when not in use by platforms such as Airbnb. Peter says vehicles like the Cedric will allow for monetizing our vehicles to become more commonplace.
If I own a Cedric, why shouldn't Cedric earn money while I am not using it? There are many possibilities and scenarios. Like if you own a Cedric, if I own a Cedric, first of all, I could share it easily with my friends, with people I trust. If I don't need it, I send you my QR code and you can open and maneuver the Cedric like you want. So sharing it in your community, with your friends, maybe with your neighbors, when you don't need it, somebody else is using it. And then the next step would be handing it out to foreigners, kind of as a business opportunity. Could be a rolling office that you are providing to your customers. Could be a rolling cafe, could be a rolling kindergarten. It could be basically, there are almost endless opportunities.
Designed as a spacious cabin which seats up to 4 passengers, the vehicle is entirely autonomous. And where we normally expect a windscreen, there's a large interactive screen.
I am your car. I recognize your voice from when you made the booking.
A version of the Cedric is currently on display at London's V&A Museum, giving the public a glimpse of what the technology might offer. But although this concept is being tested by Volkswagen, it could be a while before we see the Cedric on our roads.
Technology-wise,
so you have seen how the technology plays a greater role in this particular industry. And the second one is improved safety. So in that one, you know, the demand is like increasing day by day. More recently, the automobile manufacturer has begun introducing the emergency brake assistance system sort of steps in the vehicle. So vastly reducing the likelihood of the front end collision. So safety issue is again a part of improved safety is again a part of the technology issue. So, and I think we have the last one is environmental or the natural one. So environmental factor is again a kind of macro environment, the macro level of factor. So what is very important? Very important factor is carbon emission. So the carbon emission, we have seen the same, the emission issues or emission guidelines we have seen under the political legal. But the carbon emission, which, you know, directly, as touched upon earlier, the carbon dioxide is the one of the most serious pollutant generated by this particular industry. So, and it plays a greater role in terms of the global climate change by means of the greenhouse effect. So in the last few years, we have seen the issue of the carbon emission has gained the global attention. Is if you could remember in 2009, Swedish girl Greta Thunberg, what a splendid energy she has, and she was trying to communicate to the world leaders regarding how prominent is this issue of the carbon emission. So still she is struggling and she is trying to communicate. She is visiting, she is on the tour all around the world to educate every leaders, global political leaders, business leaders, and educators, everyone they are trying to communicate. She is trying to communicate and give this message to protect the environment to a great extent and reduce the carbon emission to a great extent. So, And the automobile industry players, they are the major pollutants. So that the business leaders, they have to take a kind of consensus together, work together to reduce this carbon emission, maybe by introducing new technology which helps a kind of. So this is again a kind of greater challenge, how to cope up with these issues. And we have seen nowadays the Tesla and the Volkswagen and all these firms, they are coming with different sort of options, different options, which is more eco-friendly, environmental friendly. So if you could remember what a great speech that Greta has given in the United Nations Climate Action Summit. Just have a have a look of 1 or 2 minutes. How she has started, what a strong pitch she has, like with
Greta. Your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago, and in the intervening time, you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe, demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams, my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting up irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below.
So you have noticed the kind of external pressure nowadays the automobile industry players, they have, because the certain lobby, certain general public, if they are demanding more and more environmental protections and the safety and balancing of the ecology steps and all, it's very difficult to operate in such a industry which has like all these tensions. So, but still, the company, they are trying their best to comply with all those issues. So somehow you understood some of the common factors which influences the industry, the automobile industry, the macro level of industry, macro factors which influences this industry. So you could apply some of these factors when you do the analysis for the particular firm such as the Ford Ranger. So did you try with the, I have here, the tutorial exercise? Did you try with working on it? Any one of you? Did you try? So these specific points are like more specific points are in the context of the company Ford Ranger, like demographic. There are some suggested learning, like some resources are there at the end. So you could go through that. It gives you a kind of more and more broad insights regarding which factors are more relevant regarding the analysis of the macro environment of this particular industry, or some of the articles are directly giving you inputs regarding the Ford Ranger itself, the company itself. So you must go through that, because using that only I have picked up some of the points. Let's see what is there in the natural. They are talking about the eco-friendly car discussion surrounded electronic options, hybrid car, alternative fuels, and the fuel efficiency due to the increasing level of the pollution and the global warming. So you see some of the points are more specific to the point. In the economy, new passengers vehicle sales are rising because of the household income. We discussed about that. So you need to come up with some of the relevant points. If you go through read the company profile, read some of the information available on websites. For the adult, see some of the links, they talks about the demographic, specifically in the Australian context. So the full-time work on the study, more than 7-10 use the passenger vehicles for their day-to-day work activities. So these are the opportunities. Some of the challenges are there. So technological issues, natural issues. These points are more specific to the firm for rangers. So in Australia, the new legislations or the new guidelines always, especially keeping in mind the new rule and regulation for the road safeties, they are in the place. And you know, although the Toyota is the best-selling car in Australia, but even but the Ford Ranger is not much behind. And people in Australia, they like the SUV sporty design. So just go through this, try to have analysis around all these macro level factors, demographic, economic, natural. All these guidelines are given in the tutorial exercise workbook, which is uploaded on the Moodle. So try to have an in-depth analysis around all these factors, because one of the certain section in your group project will ask you to fill this information. So it's very, very important. So what is the final word? Let me finish that one, and then I have some important announcement for you. So what is the final key thoughts? The motor vehicle has become a part of everyday's life for many of us. Not only we can afford to buy and fuel our cars, more than that, we are expecting to use these automobiles for on the day-to-day activities. However, the environmental consequences or the ecological issues which is driving or related to is very serious, and it looks like we might have to think about making the switch to the electric vehicle to save our planet, or to switch or move towards the application of the hybrid kind of fuel instead of the fossil fuel, which is like main source of the carbon emission. So those challenges you have to take into the consideration. So with that, let me, okay. So So what we have now is